Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Progressive podcast. And this week, we'll be talking about assessing asset risk after acquisition. And I'm joined by my friend from across the pond, Rachel Wagner, who works for our partner, Hexagon. She's no stranger to video blogs and video podcasts. If you take a look at her LinkedIn, you'll see there's plenty of video content there for you to enjoy. So I'm pleased to have Rachel on the call today. Rachel, hi.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Very welcome. Rachel, do you want to start by just introducing yourself and explaining a bit about your role at Hexagon?
Absolutely, yes. So Rachel Wagner, I work at Hexagon as an APM, Asset Performance Management Specialist. And I work with our internal account managers and our external customers to just help solve some of their greatest asset management challenges. I've spent about 20 years in industries such as aerospace, manufacturing, power generation, and oil and gas. And about half of that was in supply chain, and the latter half has been specifically in asset management. So yeah, happy to be here.
Great to have you. As you know, Rachel, we both work a lot in the oil and gas industry. So Progressive, we're specialists in the upstream, midstream sector. And I know we share a lot of industry experience. Can you share with us some of the companies that you've worked with over the years, Rachel?
Yeah, absolutely. So Alyeska Pipeline's one we've worked with, where they, had a number of RCM reliability-centered maintenance studies that were, put in place, but never fully operationalized. Hexagon came in, worked with them, and took those RCM studies and actually put them into motion such that they were able to realize, over $1 million in optimization of maintenance practices for asset management. So Alyeska was one. Another one was in midstream was Western Midstream. And they were, in a very similar situation. They were looking for, a more agile approach for managing their asset strategies. And we hear this a lot in, especially in oil and gas, but really across industries where they, have developed studies, they've invested in things like RCM or failure modes effects analysis, but then they haven't really put them into motion so that they can see in real time, how the assets are performing and what to do about it. And so that's the beauty of Hexagon APM, our APM solution, is we take all of that information, or we developed strategies ourselves, and then we actually fully operationalize them. So Western Midstream was able to avoid compressor failures. That was one of the critical assets where we put an asset strategy on, and one compressor failure saved them on the order of $50,000 to $70,000. So so again, immediate savings, and that's the beauty of what asset performance management can do.
That is awesome. Bit of a no-brainer, really. When you can make the technology can make those savings, it really is very easy to justify that investment. So as I mentioned today, we're going to be talking about asset risk after acquisition. We're continuing to see a lot of M&A activity in the oil and gas industry, and obviously consolidation can bring benefits around efficiency savings, economies of scale, but it can also bring some challenges, as you'll know, Rachel. Getting a handle on those assets that have been acquired. Sometimes they can be quite mature assets, and that needs to be done very quickly so that really the acquiring company knows where they are. So Rachel, we've been talking to a few organizations about this scenario recently. And can you just explain to us how the Hexagon APM product can address this challenge?
Yeah, absolutely. I hear from organizations all the time that they're just looking for ways to harness the information they have to generate insights about the state of their assets that they don't have, so that they can make decisions such as, how do I confidently plan for large capital investments, knowing that the assets I have in place today are going to perform as expected? No surprises. Or how do I know when is the best time to overhaul or refurbish or repair an asset versus keeping it in place because it still has life left in it, right? Or just simply, am I doing the right maintenance at the right time in the best interest of the asset in terms of performance? And all of these questions, which I'm sure organizations that acquire assets at various stages in their life cycle ask themselves, can be answered with the help of an asset performance management system. And to sum up what APM helps organizations achieve, it's predictable production at the lowest sustainable cost, all while measuring and observing the risk profile of the assets. That's it. It's all about cost, performance, and risk. And not just ambiguous, qualitative, emotionally driven risk. We're talking about continuously quantified risk that an organization always has line of sight to, so that they can, very quickly understand where their priorities need to be and how to mitigate that risk. And a very quick and easy way to get started is actually through our Hexagon Asset Risk Analyzer.
Great, yeah, and we know that's a really great. I agree, a really great way of starting. And to get some quick answers, can you just share with us some of the answers you can get from the ARA solution?
Absolutely, yeah. And essentially what ARA does is it takes a subset of your work history from your EAM, whether that's SAP or Maxima or Hexagon EAM. It's looking at all those transactions. And based on your reactive, corrective, or unplanned work orders, it will calculate a mean time between failure for each asset. And then ARA will actually look at how much are we spending? How much are we vouchering to all of those work orders, primarily labor and potentially cost, aligned for those assets. And it'll generate a probability curve using a Weibull distribution over a set mission time, let's say 1 year. And it will determine in a prioritized fashion which assets are the riskiest to the business. And why would you do this? Why would you run this risk assessment? Well, first, it gives you a place to start, right? So like if you were to implement APM on a set of critical assets or bad actors, which ones would I get the biggest bang for my buck for? So it's going to give you that list, very quickly and easily. And then second of all, it's going to tell you how much is my business spending today on all of this unplanned reactive work. And if, I were to do nothing and these assets were going to, continue to behave the same way they have been, a year from now, how much am I going to spend on unplanned work? So it starts to develop a business case to actually take action and put in place a more proactive solution, such as APM.
Great. Okay. So you've talked there about the cost of failure to the business, but there is a bigger cost, isn't there? And that's, I'm guessing, what the C-suite are going to be interested in, the cost to loss of productivity. Can you also get that information out?
Yeah, great question. So as I mentioned, ARA is only looking at the work order costs, which is typically labor and parts. But the real dollars come into play when you're taking into account all the possible losses of a downtime event. And this could be productivity loss and a direct hit to revenue, which obviously creates a financial drag. It could be environmental factors. It could be safety factors, right? Unplanned work tends to be on the order of 4 to 9x the cost of preventative work. So obviously, not, financially not great, but also when it's unplanned, it can put people in unsafe environments, right? And create a safety event. So those are things we want to avoid as much as possible. And so APM takes into consideration all of the possible consequences of an asset failing. And that is what goes into the risk score that's quantified for each asset inside of the APM solution that, everyone always has line of sight to, and then can prioritize action based on that.
Great, thank you. And thanks also for highlighting safety and environmental risk. I mean, that is obviously extremely important, and the reputational damage that can result from any of those events. So absolutely important. And great that you can also look at all of those different risks. Can I now just ask you something that's some of our clients and companies we talk to raise, that particularly maybe once, if you're acquiring new assets from another company, you haven't got that historical data to push into the system. What do you do in that situation?
Yeah, honestly, we see this a lot, especially for new builds or new construction, right? Where you obviously don't have any history, any historical data. If you don't have historical data, it doesn't make a big impact on how powerful APM can be once it starts consuming data. Having historical information, that's good for maybe training some models or looking for potential issues based on past failures, or maybe just accelerating the effectiveness of that overall asset strategy, because again, you're continuously improving the strategy. But it is absolutely not necessary, and a lot of customers fall into that box where they don't have historical data to lean on. And so APM really just takes the information you have to start generating insights and information that you don't necessarily have. And it really doesn't matter at what point you start feeding in that information, even if it's, new and clean today, and we start running it through that strategy.
What a supportive tool. That's great. You have an answer for everything, Rachel. We've been talking about the oil and gas industry today, but I know that we both work in other asset intensive industries. Do you want to give a few examples of other industries where APM really comes into its own?
Yeah, so APM is just really a vital element of the overall asset management system for any capital intensive industry. It's a strategic or predictive layer that is feeding in information you have, from EAM or from condition monitoring solutions. Or APM is very industry agnostic, right? There's not a piece of equipment that APM can't handle. We've built twins for, across all sorts of industries, such as, manufacturing and aerospace and, pharmaceutical, consumer product goods, power generation across the powertrain and balance of plant assets, right? These are not uncommon assets that we've seen. Data centers, right? That's kind of a new market that we've tapped into. But again, they have critical assets, UPSs, computer room air handlers. Like, you don't want those going down. Otherwise, your data center is going down. So really, really doesn't matter what industry you're in as far as APM having an impact and bringing value. And I will just put one plug in for our Hexagon APM solution. We have developed an AI agent that can actually generate an asset strategy for any piece of equipment on the planet in a matter of just minutes, and then fully operationalize that. So again, really doesn't matter what industry it's in. We've talked to all of these industries and worked with all of them, and an APM, is very applicable.
That's fantastic. And that's a really great example of the power of AI. Thank you. I know that Progressive, myself, and everyone and our clients are all really excited about the APM solution. It looks great. It's got a great dashboard feel to it. So we'd be very keen to show people watching this podcast how it can actually work in practice, give you a look and feel of the product. So please do get in touch with me, Alison Richards, if you'd like to know more. Hopefully this podcast has whet your appetite on how you can use APM to really focus on where you need to be, which assets are important, the bad actors, where maybe you need to be building some predictive or strategic asset management practices. But for today, I'm signing out now. Until next time, hope you enjoyed the podcast. Thanks.
Thank you.